You know, I think the last time that I got excited about a new video game coming out was when Legacy of the Void and Fallout 4 came out on the same day. Now, for reference, I got Fallout 4 instead of Legacy of the Void. Not because I was more excited for Fallout 4, but because my computer is kind of held together by the thoughts and prayers of my Facebook friends. And, you know, I kind of wanted an upgrade before I got Legacy of the Void. Safe to say, I still haven't gotten that upgrade, but that's the reason that I got City of Brass on Xbox. And City of Brass had me excited right out of the gate. I mean, it's got some pedigree. It's an Australian game, which is awesome, because I love to support, you know, Australian-run businesses, because I'm Australian. And it's also about Uppercut Games, a studio which includes developers who worked on Fallout Tactics and XCOM and Bioshock. And you may have noticed that I kind of like Bioshock. So let's have a look at City of Brass, shall we? City of Brass is a first-person Arabian Nights themed game, available on PC, PS4 and Xbox One, where you run through a cursed city, picking up as much gold and jewels as you can, while avoiding traps swinging from the ceiling and decapitating zombies. There's multiple characters to play, unlocked as you spend more time with the game, starting with the Fool and the Traveller. Functionally, they are the same character, but one is male and one is female, and both have a sword and a whip. Then there's the Soldier, who's my personal favourite, who replaces the sword with a spear that she can magically recall to her hand. Then there's the Brigand, who has less health than the others, but has a brace of throwing knives, and moves faster. And then there's the Hellion, who's got more health than the others, and moves slower, and has a big old punching fist, because he's actually a genie. And there's also the Revenant, who's currently only available on the PC version of the game, not on the console versions, and he just replaces the sword or spear or fist or throwing knives with a crossbow. And that sounds cool. The difficulty settings in City of Brass functions sort of like the skulls in the Halo games, allowing you to just customize the difficulty. You want more enemies? More enemies! You want less enemies? Less enemies! More traps? Less traps! You know, enemies are tougher, you're tougher. You've got better weapons, the enemies have worse weapons. Whatever you like, go nuts. Filling all this out, City of Brass is a roguelite game, which means it's not quite a roguelike. The roguelike elements in it are being procedurally generated, the unlocking of different characters, and being able to pass some of your upgrades to the next playthrough of the same character. But not always. What story there is little more than set dressing on the hack and slash mechanics, and there's so little in terms of quantifiable progression that I feel like City of Brass has more in common with old arcade games than modern roguelikes. Mechanically, of notable use is the whip, which every character has access to. The whip can be used to stun, disarm, trip, and pull enemies, as well as to break objects and pull them towards yourself. There's something incredibly satisfying about pulling zombies into traps or whipping the sword out of a charging skeleton's hand. So really, the mechanics are solid, the aesthetic is nice, and the concept is intriguing. And there's extremely customizable difficulty settings and ongoing support from the developers. But I began playing this game and I was unaware that it was a roguelike. The game description both on the Steam page and the Xbox store writes, a first-person action-adventure inspired by Arabian Nights from the senior Bioshock developers. The user-defined tags on Steam do list it as a roguelite, and delving deeper into the Steam store page actually reveals the same, but not so on the Xbox store, which is a bit of an issue. When it says a first-person action-adventure from the senior Bioshock developers, it makes me think there's going to be a story-driven experience, which, when combined with the setting and the idea of saving a cursed city, it feels like there should be a lot more than a bare-bones story there. But that's sort of my fault, I guess, for not delving deep enough into things before I just went, oh cool, hell yeah, I'm gonna get this. It's from people who made Bioshock. No, I should have done my due diligence, but also, they probably should have advertised it a little bit more heavily. And since there isn't much in the way of story there, the game has to stand on mechanics instead of clever writing or an interesting story. And well, let's see how that pans out, shall we? Do you remember how good it felt in Bioshock to hit a splicer with the wrench? I would often get rid of guns and just power up my wrench and just smack people with it because it felt so good. Or do you remember how good it felt to use any gun in Doom 2015? I bring up the Bioshock comparison just because it's from developers who worked on Bioshock, so you'd think that that weapon feel was still there. But City of Brass doesn't have this. It doesn't have that satisfying thwack that wrench in Bioshock has. Swinging a sword at your enemies feels ineffective. They recoil, but it doesn't feel like it's in sync with your strikes, and it loses out on that all-important weapon feel. The strikes of the sword, in short, feel sluggish. The spear though, I unlocked the soldier and I was sure that I would love it. The spear has a slightly longer reach, and more importantly, when you hold down the attack button, you flip the spear over and you throw it at your enemy. Releasing the button will throw the spear, leaving it stuck in your opponent, whereupon you can pull the trigger again and it comes back to you magically. That's awesome! What's not to love? Well, the spear moves slower than you'd expect, and it curves downwards a lot faster than you would expect, which means that you need to take the time to aim properly, so you need to aim higher than you think, and then lead the target more than you think, and that's confounded a little bit by the aim assist. Aim assist is necessary on a console game, as it's a lot more difficult to aim with a controller than it is with a mouse and keyboard. The problem with City of Brass, however, is that I've found that the aim assist is only very slight, but seems geared towards melee combat. What this means is that if you are carefully lining up a shot with a spear or the brigand's knives, your aim is going to be brought down towards the enemy, when you know that you need to aim above them in order for the spear to hit their head. Or if you're trying to aim past them to hit an explosive barrel and take out an entire group of enemies instead of having them all swarm you. The added downside of this is the amount of time that it takes to recall the spear, or reload your set of knives. It takes 1 to 2 seconds, and the spear doesn't magically fly back to your hand like Thor's hammer or Kratos' axe. Your hand glows, and then after a couple of seconds it just reappears. And the animation is cool, I will give them that. But while the animation is ongoing, you're unable to use your whip, and you're unable to push people, and you move slower. This is a problem because although you can get your spear back by grabbing it out of your enemy, or grabbing it back with your whip, if you fall prey to the aim assist while doing the aforementioned aim at the barrel and everyone explodes thing, your spear might be stuck in an enemy which is just somewhere in the middle of a big crowd of people. So you can't get it with your hands, and you can't get it with your whip, so you've got to magically recall it to your hand, and that 1 to 2 seconds is oftentimes enough time for them to get to you and stab you. Which is not good, because health is not abundant in this game. Now how would I solve this? I would solve this by having it fly back to your hand like it does in God of War. Take God of War as an example, it is an excellent game. If you have it recall to your hand like that, the amount of time that it takes to get back to you is dependent on how far away it is. So if you've thrown it really, really far, it's going to take a little while to get back to you. If it's just next to you, it's going to take no time at all. This would also possibly make it a little bit faster. You throw it at an enemy, you recall it, and then you've got it back in your hand fast enough to be able to stab them. The Brigand as a character has a completely different problem, in that his character is essentially Genji from Overwatch. He's got lower health, he moves faster, he's got 3 throwing knives and an unlimited supply to reload from, and the problem is that he has to be compared to Genji, who has additional movement mechanics that just make him feel better to control. His shuriken don't immediately plummet to the ground whilst moving at about the speed of Half-Life's production schedule, and he's also got the Dragon Blade, which is just cool. Now how would I fix the Brigand? Well, increase the speed of their projectiles, and I would have them drop off slower. So rather than them just almost immediately start plummeting towards the ground, I'll make them go straight for a bit further before going in towards the ground, and you can't see my hand as I'm doing this, so I'm just going to put it on screen right here. So instead of going like straight down, they're going to go across and then down. If you get what I mean. And the Hellion? There's nothing that I like about the Hellion. I don't know if that's because he's a bad character or if it's just not my style of play, but I can't stand him. There's also so many small things in City of Brass that I could talk about at length. I could talk about how the character select screen has several icons down the bottom which are supposed to match up on each screen telling you what character you're selecting, but then they don't match up in the exact positioning, and some of them all have different size borders and text. I tell you about how the treasures need to be picked up by looking at each one and pressing the interact button, but this is much harder on console because you need to be looking pixel perfect at them rather than just close to them. And for some reason, if the item is on a shelf and you can't see the whole item, you need to either jump up so it's entirely visible or use your whip to pick it up. There was also an update release which added potions to the game, which give you a small limited time bonus. The problem here is that the limited time is far too limited. When so much about the gameplay seems to encourage you to be slow and methodical, you're not going to get a whole load of use out of any potions that you do find. Also, the fact that so much of the gameplay encourages you to be slow and methodical, so you don't get hit because there is so little health around to find, doesn't really work so much when you've got a limited time in order to get through every level. What does happen if you run out of time, though, is you won't immediately lose. You'll get these fiery orbs which appear and will start following you, and you can't damage these orbs. But, funnily enough, these orbs are subject to gravity. So if you just jump over a pit trap, the orb will follow you and fall into the pit trap. And that's just kind of funny. These unstoppable orbs just fall into a pit. Also, back on the subject of potions, once you drink one, half of your screen is covered in a vignette effect that restricts your vision and makes it much more likely to get blindsided by an enemy that you couldn't see because the game is reminding you that you were stupid enough to pick up a bottle of mystery liquid in an ancient cursed city and just drink it. The team at Uppercut Games has stated publicly that as developers they wanted to try their hand at procedural generation, after finding the task of handcrafting every nook and cranny very resource intensive for their previous games that merged. You know what, Uppercut Games? Yeah, you are entirely right. It is very resource intensive and very slow to handcraft and design every single nook and cranny in a level, but you know what that leads to? That leads to stuff like Bioshock, which was a masterpiece, and just so much great environmental storytelling. And when your game is as bare bones story-wise as City of Brass is, you could probably use some environmental storytelling. Like, I applaud the whole wanting to go and do something different and getting that procedural generation stuff done when you haven't done it before, but also it just feels kind of slapdash here. Because after a while, you just sort of realize that there's 10, 20 rooms per section that are just sort of reused over and over again, and everything starts to feel samey. Oh, look, this area is covered in plants. It still feels the same. Oh, this area has lava. Bringing this back to some positivity for a little bit, there are genies throughout the game, which allow you to spend all of your ill-gotten treasure. Or maybe not ill-gotten, because can you really steal from zombies and skeletons? I say no! Now, these genies will provide you with things like buying some more health, or buying new weapons, or disabling traps, or summoning some companions. What you can also do with these genies, because they're genies, and this is Arabian Nights themed, is you get 3 wishes. If you spend a wish with a genie, the stuff gets more powerful, which is cool. If you go to one of the genies which will heal you, you spend a wish, and then you're at full health when you heal from that genie, which is great, although it costs a lot more money. If you go to a genie which sells you items, you spend a wish, and then you've got better weapons and better armor that you can buy. It's great. There's also genies which are hostile, and you run up to them and spend a wish, and then they become good guys, which is great. You can also use your wishes to skip to different parts of the game. So once you've beaten the first section, you can spend 1 wish to get to the second section. If you've beaten the second section, you can spend 2 wishes to get to the third section, etc., etc., etc. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now what you should spend your 3 wishes on. You should always spend a wish on the genie who gives you better gear, because you're going to want better gear in order to complete the game. You should also spend wishes on the genies who throw fireballs at you and the genies who summon little ghostly minions to chase you, because they are so much more useful attacking your enemies, and you don't want to be having to deal with that when you're trying to deal with all the enemies who are teleporting around and throwing fireballs or shooting at you with arrows or just cornering you into a corner. And one last thing which I feel like I have to bring up is that the game is Arabian Nights themed. Now, being a white person from a country where the term good old-fashioned fun-loving Aussie racism is a thing, I'm not in a position to point out whether or not the betrayal of the area and era are in poor taste or not. But I'm aware that it's definitely an area that I would personally tiptoe around. I think it's probably fine, I don't have a problem with it, and kudos to the dev team for having such diverse genders available for play and not whitewashing any of the characters, which is all great and makes me feel like it's probably fine, but it's also a thing that I just have to put out there and say that this is a thing. I don't know if it's problematic or not, but I mean, you can make up your own minds. I trust you. So, is City of Brass any good? Well, how does it stack up against TIE Fighter? It doesn't stack up against TIE Fighter. TIE Fighter's amazing. I don't even know why I'm comparing it to that. Pfft, please. But, is City of Brass any good? Yeah, it's alright. It's alright. Do I recommend it? Not really. No. I don't not recommend it. That's the thing. I'm not gonna say yes, but I'm not gonna say no. I'm just here in the middle. I'm here in the middle. If you want to pick it up, sure, go ahead. I honestly had kind of fun with it, and I might play a bit more of it today, even. And I'm saying that right after I downloaded Bioshock again, because I really wanted to play Bioshock. So I don't regret any of the time that I spent with City of Brass. It's kind of fun. The mechanics are alright, if a little bit stodgy. I will say though, my friend watched me play a little bit of this recently, and he said, hey, I feel like watching this game is going to make me feel motion sick. And I tend not to get motion sick playing games. I haven't delved into VR games at all, because, again, my computer. But, that might be a thing to keep in mind. If you've been watching any of the footage of this and feeling like it might make you motion sick playing this game, maybe steer clear. But honestly, yeah, it's kind of fun. If it's cheap, pick it up. I will definitely say pick it up on Steam though. Don't get a console version because that aim assist is not assisting at all. Bye.